this is a very basic thing today, which many people don't know about, or it takes them a long time to find that option. It's about the Cartesian XYZ system, where we usually work in. That's the 3 axes depicted here. When we create a curve, for example, I'm under the curve surfaces menu set now. When I create a curve with a pencil, it looks pretty much free in space, like this. But when I rotate the scene, the camera, it's flat on the XZ plane. And it's very interesting to paint on surfaces. That means you change the Cartesian system to another system. And the other system is called life in Maya. You make an object life. Now let's do that. We create a NURBS torus. We give it a nicer color. For example, a light blue. Now this object is in the XYZ or XYZ scene, and if I use the pencil paint tool now, and I paint on the object, see what's happening? It's painting the curve flat. When I pick the curve, it has 3 arrows, the arrows we're used to, up, right, and forward and backward. And that's not what we want. We want to paint on the torus. That's what we're going to do now. We have the torus selected and go to modify, and here we find make live. It looks deselected, but it's sort of selected like the grid always looks deselected. You cannot select the grid really when you work on the grid. It's the same with the torus now. The torus is waiting for something to happen. And we will make it happen by choosing the pencil curve tool again, create a curve on the grid or on a live surface. That's what we are going to do now. So we're creating that curve here now on the torus. And oddly enough, it doesn't show up in the outliner. There's still only the NURBS torus, and that's all there is. Since I did the drawing a little bit out of the realm of the torus, we have, I think, 2, maybe 3 curves, and I delete 1. So that's 1. So when I go to the pick tool now, I have 1 curve on the torus. Now, yeah, if I want to move this using the W key, this is happening. It moves in the UV direction on the surface of the torus, and it doesn't go away from there. So it always sticks to it. We have a 2-dimensional object because it's a surface and it's not space. That's why we have only 2 arrows. We can press the key F8, which brings us from object mode to CV mode. And for example, let me see which ones we pick. Let's pick the 3 or 4 of them. And again, we're moving on the torus and not free in space. Press F8 again, and we're back in the object mode. So what can we do with that curve? We can do nice things with the curve. Let's create another sphere, make it much smaller, like this, give it another color, blend again, and I think this is going to be brownish. So with the sphere selected, we select, you use Shift key, we select the curve together with the sphere. And now we want to attach the sphere to the curve so it flows along the curve. How do we do that? If you don't know where to find the menu for that, but if you know how to call it, go to Help and find Menu. I know what it's called. It's called a motion path. And you hit Enter, and it tells you several menus where you find motion paths. But the interesting one for us is under Animation, Constrain Motion Path attached to Motion Path. That's what we're going to do now. So we need to be in the Animation menu set, which we are. So we see the Constrain menu, which is here. And under the Constrain menu, we have Motion Paths, and here we can do several things. Constrain motion paths attached to motion path. This is what happens. It floats along the torus surface. And of course, when you render it, the curve won't be rendered because it's has no dimension really. But this will look quite interesting. To give you a bit more practice in terms of making an object live, question, is the small sphere live now? No, it isn't. Go to Modify and make it live. If you don't want to have it live again, make it not live. But currently we want to have it live. And we use our pencil tool again and paint a little bit on the surface here. It's again 2 curves, but that doesn't matter. We will only use one of them. This is always dependent on where you paint. When you paint sort of free in space, the live object doesn't know, is this meant for me? So I use a projection to project it onto me, but it splits it into 2 objects, then into 2 curves in that case. Now we need another thing which can move along the brown surface, and we create a 3rd sphere. Give it another color, and you can guess what we're going to pick now as color. I don't know yet. It's probably, sorry, a dark blue. And we select the tiny blue sphere. We select the curve on the brown sphere. We go back to Constrain Motion Paths, attach to Motion Path, and this is what we get. We get a blue sphere moving along the brown sphere, moving along the torus. So to finalize that, if we want to paint real paint on that surface, on one of the surfaces, it's not done by making it live. Make live is a thing which has been in Maya since version 1. I think it was version 3 when the paint effects were introduced. And the paint effects, where can you find them? Well, I think under modeling, oddly enough, and under generate. So let's pick this object, go to generate, and now the command we need in order to paint color on it is called make paintable. Now that surface is paintable, and what I'll do now is I'll leave the perspective window. I go to the top window, for example. I press and hold the space bar, and now I create another perspective view here. It's basically the same. I have the 2 same things here, but I want to switch this over to, it's not really necessary, but it looks quite nice, and it keeps things nice and tidy. Now we go to the Paint Effects tool and we choose, maybe no, we don't need the tool set here, but now you see that this red thing it's the brush, sticks to the blue torus. And depending on what kind of brush we have, how to select another brush like a grass or a flower or an oil stroke, I can tell you in another tutorial. But for now, we just paint on the blue torus, and this thing will stick on there until we're finished. And that's all by making things live. And we have two kinds of ways to make things live. One is for painting, which is under the Generate and Paint Effects tool. And the other is under Modify, Make Not Live, Make Live.